On this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, we catch up with some of the bigger news items of the week, and we speak with Mushroom Networks on the use of SDN in the enterprise WAN environment.
Today's episode is brought to you by Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.net.
Hello and welcome to this week's NFV SDN Reality Check. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief here at RCR Wireless News. Thanks for joining us this week. Well, we'll start off with touching on some of the top news from the week. The Open Network Labs Open Network Operating System Project and the Linux Foundation announced a partnership designed to boost open source-based work targeting SDN and NFV. The two groups formed a collaborative project under the umbrella of the Linux Foundation, which is designed to focus work from the ONOS community on open source platforms, solutions, and ecosystems for service providers to monetize SDN and NFV while helping vendors and service providers invent new business models. Specifically, the partnership is set to focus on creating SDN solutions tapping open source software platforms, white boxes, network control, and management applications to boost the creation and deployment of SDN platforms. Also this week, Etsy's NFV Industry Specifications Group released 3 new specifications targeting security and reliability for NFV deployments. Those specs include compliance with lawful interception implementations, security features in open source management software using OpenStack as the first use case, and a focus on reliability looking at using cloud and data center techniques and adapting and achieving scalability, efficiency, and reliability in NFV environments. Well, make sure to keep up on the latest NFV and SDN news at rcrwireless.com. Well, I recently had a chance to speak with Jay Akin, who's the CEO at Mushroom Networks, on the company's work with using SDN in the enterprise WAN environment. Akin provided an overview of the company's work, an overview of the application of SDN to WANs, target markets for SD-WAN, his view on the current SDN and NFV market, and the importance of SDN and NFV to the telecom space. Let's take a look at the interview now. Maybe describe a little bit about what you guys do and kind of how you participate in the telecom space.
Sure, absolutely. We are a company based out of San Diego, and we are known for our broadband bonding routers, a very specialized networking equipment that is designed for enterprise branch office communication. And what really the appliances are designed for are to intelligently manage 2 or more internet lines, including specialty IP transports like MPLS, for better user experience. And there are, of course, various ways that you can accomplish that. But in a nutshell, we provide business-targeted routers to enhance end-user experience.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, and obviously out there in San Diego, it's a very tech-heavy environment, especially a lot of companies out there working in the wireless space as well. So I'm sure you guys are right in the heart of all the action out there. So that's always good. And always, of course, always nice weather too. So that's a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't complain.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe start with now. I know one of the things that was definitely of interest of what you guys are working on was kind of using SDN in the WAN environment. That's correct. Maybe can you describe a little bit what you guys are doing in terms of kind of the move towards virtualization using SDN and kind of some of your products out there?
Sure, absolutely. And I think maybe I can also describe the SDN design architecture that we're using, because I think if you look at it at a high level, software-defined networking is inevitable. There might be all sorts of different standards, different groups, different sort of jockeying, so to speak, that might be going on. But I think the eventual path is, like in any great technology, I think is one shape or form, and SDN-based architecture will win in the areas that are applied. And if we have been actually designing our software-defined networking architecture for a while, but we also watched the data center applications come to fruition with the specific implementations of SDN. Yep. But the way we look at it, and I think this is fairly common perspective on SDN as well, if you can make the hardware and the software layers independent, and more specifically control plane and the data plane, or you can call them the control layer and forwarding layer as well. So depending on which group you're at. You might have different, but it's basically the same thing. You're trying to implement sophisticated and potentially changing over time functions on hopefully very cost-effective legacy. Currently, it's x86 based hardware that you can take advantage of. Yeah. So the concept being, rather than having a very specialized custom silicon on your chip, on your hardware, which basically has its advantages depending on the specific application. So, for example, if you optimize the hell out of the silicon for a specific application, you can get, and if you have scale, you can get certain benefits. But in today's world, I think the generalized processors are so powerful. They are really beating any custom silicon in terms of performance, and not to mention, of course, the cost advantages of x86-based platforms. So that's, I think, it's a very unavoidable trend, and why not take advantage of that in the networking space as well? The way I almost look at it, I don't know if you remember those one game, very simple Game Boys at the time, which had these very simplistic games, and it was designed for one thing and one thing only, to play that game. It's great, but if you can update the games depending on your desires and needs and requirements, the way I look at it is it's a gaming console, right? And you have new games that you can push, download, whatever that updating mechanism is. You get to a platform which ages slowly. Of course, technology will always make hardware redundant, but with the virtualized environments and with the cost benefits of the x86 compute, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at the gaming consoles. A great analogy. I mean, the gaming consoles nowadays. I mean, you get a PS4 and it's like a supercomputer you have now. So the processing power is definitely out there. That's for sure. So I guess, how are you using that then in your own work, which you guys are doing with your products now?
Yeah, so we actually, oddly enough, we in a way, even though some companies, the approach is to have the quote-unquote plumbing, which is basically having the API and the southbound, northbound layers that manages the communication between those layers with the controller and the switches. The way, and this is tying into our historic basically our history of building broadband bonding routers as well as other specialized network functions. We really started with building specialized NFVs, so to speak. And maybe it's a good sort of sidestep to describe the understanding of NFV at this point as well. Once you have that software-defined networking, which gives you the ability to be able to manage, modify, and push various controls and what they call network function virtualization, NFVs, into the hardware platform, it really gives you that flexibility and scalability. And what NFVs are really the specific implementations of the networking functions. And this can be anything from very simple firewalling to simple load balancing, all the way to very sophisticated, and that's really where we're focusing, very sophisticated implementations of specific network functions. This can be, for example, broadband bonding, which is what we're doing today. It can be very specialized real-time flow controls on the applications. And even though we're not in that space, you can go into other sort of WAN applications where you might have a storage component which interacts with that, a big data component which interacts with that. So it's NFV is really the algorithmic description of what the system will be doing. And our approach has been, why not create a platform, an SDN-based architecture, where, of course, we will be implementing the NFVs that are popular and that we are building today, but also have that platform functionality down the road when different NFVs, maybe we are not even able to envision them today, when those become available, with a very easy way of building that NFV and deploying it to the edge devices. So that's really one of the core implementations of our SDN component, having that architecture where not requiring to be a software engineer to be able to design a new NFV and push it out to the edge devices. I think there is some level of limitation in today's NFVs. First of all, I think we are at the very, very early stages of having a family of NFVs. Primarily today, especially on the SDWAN side, which is a little bit different, and I think it trails a little bit compared to the data center applications. But on the software-defined wide area networking, it's primarily today the focal area is configuration and management, which is a very important part of it. But I also think on the wide area networking side, there is a bigger potential where you can go beyond and take advantage of certain specialized NFVs to enhance end user experience. Because if you compare wide area networks, which are way more resource limited compared to local area networks, which is the framework of a data center versus a branch office, the specialty NFVs all of a sudden start to become more valuable for specific applications. Maybe within a data center, even though it's important there as well, certain type of, let's say, jitter management may not be as important as a branch office utilizing an IPPBX over their WAN architecture and really do care about their jitter management. So I think one sort of interesting thing we will start to see is, especially on the wide area networking side, a more focus on the NFV and getting deeper and deeper, almost going deeper in the tissue, so to speak, rather than staying at the management and configuration functions, going deeper, of course, starting with simple load balancing and things like that, but being able to go deeper to provide NFVs that go really optimize and match to specific applications and use cases.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you said, we are very early in the process here, but you're right. It does seem like operators, I know the ones I've talked to, they are dipping their toe in the water, kind of looking at different things they can do. But yeah, we are still a ways away, I think, from them being comfortable enough with bringing this deeper into their organization too. Because again, it does seem telecom operators, as opposed to perhaps data centers, have a maybe a little higher service level quality agreements and things like that, that they have to really make sure that their customers that they can match up to. And so I think they're still trying to get comfortable with the fact of turning over a lot of this control over to software, because that's, for a lot of those guys, it's a whole new mindset for them. So a bit of a challenge here getting them, I'm thinking, up to speed on that. But yeah, it's a good point. It's definitely expanding pretty rapidly, though. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of interest in it, and you guys are doing a lot with it as well, too. So it's a big change out there right now. Yep.
Absolutely. And I think the one factor that we will see play out is the catering towards carriers and ISPs. I think that's one key factor because I think there's an underserved market today where certain sophisticated services, especially if you go towards the lower end of the market, let's say, of course, for enterprises, I think it's a more straightforward path to adapt SD-WAN. But if you're looking at a small mom and pop shop, which still gets their services from the carriers and maybe doesn't have the in-house capabilities, doesn't have the dedicated IT personnel to implement certain network services, they will look towards the carriers for services available. And I think the SDN framework really is an enabler for carriers to be able to easily implement, roll out, and easily manage and control those services, even going all the way to the SMB level. So I think that's one thing that we'll probably see happening as carriers start to adapt and utilize it for their enterprise and business clients as well. Of course, it's a time-taking process as everyone. They're also waiting and trying to see which standard is going to be the standard, if there is anything like that. making sure, because they have a different perspective on what SDN provides for them. I think at the end of the day, them being a customer of SDN is a great value and value proposition for them. So the key is to make sure vendors don't try to play around that and get into some of the historic things we've seen with other standard discussions and efforts, trying to basically positioning to try to stick with their static core advantages and things like that. But I think it's SDN is conceptually so powerful. The gravity, so to speak, is so strong.
Yeah.
I think eventually things will line up correctly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned obviously. I think even now, I think some of the telecom guys I know, like AT&T, I think for instance, recently said they're using SDN for some of their enterprise provisioning services, allowing some of their customers actually tap into their SDN platform for their own provisioning now. And I've talked to Verizon too; they're working the same path as well. So yeah, you're right. I think as they're getting more familiar, they're starting to kind of use it in different specific areas that it makes sense at least initially to try it in. So. Yeah, it's definitely moving that way pretty quickly. I guess now for you guys, I mean, who are you targeting mostly with your platforms? Are you guys looking to partner with the carriers directly, looking more enterprises? I mean, what's your kind of target market?
Yeah, our target market are the enterprises in general. So we are just starting to we have ISP clients as well, but it hasn't been our primary focus. Although with the maturation of SDN, I think we're starting to look into that as a channel as well. Because one interesting thing is on the NFVs that we have been focusing, there is what we call a meta ISP concept. What that is basically giving the power to enterprises to be able to bring in multiple service providers and manage the connectivity. So the way we do the broadband bonding is by bringing in 2 or more internet lines, and those don't need to be from the same carrier. So in most cases, what we've seen in our deployments, an enterprise would have in their branch offices, and in multinationals, you will see different carriers in different regions and locations. But in general terms, they would have more than one service provider in a location. So the functionality we provide is not necessarily ideally provided by a single carrier, although it can be. So that's why we have been focused more through a value-added reseller channel where the IT integrators bring in the solution to the enterprises. But as I said, as SDN evolves, we're also evolving as well. We're watching all these standards very, very closely. Open Daylight versus the Open Platform NFV, the newer one.
Yeah.
So Open vSwitch is definitely one of the sort of implementations of OpenFlow that we've been tracking closely. So as those evolve, it becomes another path for us to bring our solutions to our client base.
Yeah. And it sounds like you guys are really giving the enterprise customers a lot more power in the situation too, because I mean, again, they're not beholden to just one broadband provider. I mean, they could definitely bring in multiple, manage it all how they want to. It seems like it's giving them a lot more power in how they manage their resources, really.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, even in terms of the SDN architecture, we're looking at it that way. I mean, of course, the traditional way is the vendors create the NFVs and provide it as a service, which is great, which is what we are doing as well. However, I think there is another step beyond that, especially for enterprise implementations. If there is a correct framework or correct frameworks that enables enterprises to, quote unquote, build their own NFVs as a function of their needs, I think there is a very large unmet demand there. For example, I'm going to give a very simplistic example, but imagine a branch office overseas where the networking conditions might be time dependent, and perhaps some of the links might have some cost restrictions depending on certain times or certain usage, so on and so forth. So for a vendor to be able to build that specific product is really not practical, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's way too custom, too much specialization in that sort of solution approach. But if you have a toolkit, and the key there is very easy to build and control and manage. If you have a toolkit that enables that IT person, without requiring them to be a software engineer, to build a very custom NFV for their needs. And in that specific case, their requirement might be during weekdays after 5 p.m. shut off my WAN 3 because the utilization, the cost on that is too high. And if on my other lines, let's say my jitter goes out of bounds with this much, prefer WAN 1, something like that. A very, very custom solution can be implemented if you have the right framework. And that's what we have been sort of building, going back to the empowering of the enterprises. If you give them these toolkits, I think that's the maximum empowerment of the IT personnel within there. It's not just ease of configuration and management and control, but being able to implement certain NFVs that fit the requirements like a glove. And in our particular case, and certainly this is not the only way, I'm sure there will be other methodologies, maybe CLI-based ones, but the one we chose is a graph-based drag-and-drop architecture where you have a library of nodes, and this will be a growing library, obviously, as more and more requirements come up, where the IT manager can drag and drop these nodes and interconnect them, and literally creating a flow chart for the individual packets to trace, and then push that through the SDN framework to all of their devices or the devices they choose within their whole set, and implement that to their liking. So I think that's really powerful, not just for implementing those, but then enabling the measurement and analysis and synthesis of their data as well. So again, they will be able to drop another node in there to measure the data, maybe have time series collection of that data, and maybe they have another big data product. We don't currently have that, but they may have a big data product that they want to dump that data into, analyze that, and really empower the IT managers. So I think that's the vision I have, or our company has, for SDN applied to wide area networking. Again, coming back to what I said at the top of our conversation, I think wide area networks, because of the resource variations and all sorts of different applications that directly touch to the end user, opens the opportunity to provide more value with deeper NFVs. You can really implement more sophisticated and deeper NFVs. And I think this is going to be an ongoing process. Vendors will come up with more and more. And I already have seen it. Initially, the NFVs that were out there were very, very, very simplistic. And then the load balancing is coming. And I think we will see that becoming more and more deeper into the networking layer, so to speak.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I mean, you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but it does seem like that really is a necessity for the vendor community to really be maybe on the same page with this too, because, again, if an enterprise, for instance, is going to start picking certain products from different vendors, they just want it to all be able to plug together and work. And as you mentioned too, we are kind of in this phase of SDN and virtualization where we're so early into it that there really are no standards per se. There are, different organizations that are trying to, keep things, maybe somewhat in line. But it does seem like we still are in a bit of a Wild West, I guess, view of kind of, where we're going with this. I mean, how important is it from your point of view that everybody kind of gets on board to, if not the same exact standard, at least going in the same direction? Because, as you mentioned, I mean, there are a lot of organizations out there, OPNFV, Open Daylight, I don't know, a new one every week seems to pop up. But, different people coming around, and even Etsy is still working on the standards when it comes to the big picture as well. So there seems like there's still so much unknown, and there's still, but there are companies and customers that are wanting to go forward with this. How important is it to kind of get everybody working together on this?
Yeah, I think that is a challenge, and I think we historically have seen it with every standardization effort over the years as well. I mean, one of the immediate ones that come to mind, since we are in San Diego, so I'm pretty close with the cellular environment and the Wi-Fi standardization. With the 802.11n, we had that two camps.
Yep.
Going back and forth, one led by Qualcomm and the other one with Broadcom.
Yep.
I think it will take time. So clearly there will be, I think, this turbulent period where there will be competing, and I think that's good and healthy for the industry in general. Early on, there will be competing ideas, there will be competing standards, and it may not be clear from day one which one is really better for the industry as a whole. So I think that those will play out over time. But I think the key determining factor there will be having the end users, the customers' value proposition in mind. If that is the top goal of whatever standardization body is aiming at, I think that's going to win, because you really cannot fight against that. I mean, you can fight against that. You can delay the inevitable,
sure.
But I think eventually, whichever is best for the end user, and in this case, actually, the end user description is a large set of cohorts. It's not just the enterprise, it's the carriers, it's the enterprise IT, it's all these different parties. But as long as they focus on the end user value, I think that's the winning formula.
Sure. I mean, but I guess, does that make it difficult for maybe some of the smaller vendors out there who perhaps aren't, the big giants who can kind of steer the ship a little bit more? I mean, does it make it a little more, difficult, I guess, to operate and, make, because obviously you guys have to make decisions that are, or smaller vendors make decisions based on, what they think is going to happen. You're kind of betting and hedging your bets a bit. Does it make it a little more, I'm guessing it would make it a little more nervous for companies out there trying to navigate the ways out there?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess depending on how you analyze the options,
sure.
You can make the bets early on and basically put your chips on a certain direction. And the odd thing is, although I think in SDN case we will see probably the best technologies survive, but we've known historically that's not always the case either. Sometimes the more powerful survives, and that may not be the best technology or best approach in that case. I think, one approach we have been doing is we're trying to stay close to the open standards and the openness, how open it is, how transparent it is. Do they have other agendas? And I think that's a safer bet at this point. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a guaranteed direction. It's a winning formula, but I think that's the best bet a company can do at this point. And it will be some false starts and some deployments that may not have the next generation upgrade paths because that direction is dead and things like that. But I think overall, hopefully, industry gets closer, and I think we're starting to see that as well. More and more, for example, in not to isolate any one of the particular standards, as I mentioned, we're watching them all, but with the open platform for NFV, I think that's led by the Linux Foundation, we're seeing not only vendors, but a lot of carrier participation as well. Not all carriers, but definitely it's more of a consensus type approach. So I think those are the key things to track. Are they supported and pushed and favored by the customers, which basically indicates the standards are geared towards providing value to the customer versus any other secondary motives.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I talked to OPNFV just recently, actually, and they were definitely very excited about where they're going, the direction they're going in. And like you said, they're getting a lot of good support too. I mean, again, we're still early, and not all the carriers are getting on board because they're still trying to hedge their bets as well. But they do have a pretty good support system out there. And again, just going to the open part, that does make the most sense. It probably seems like at this point. I mean, obviously, I think some of the bigger vendors obviously have a legacy history of trying to be very proprietary with what they do. But at least at least in the telecom space, I think most of the operators are pushing towards that open standard because they want to be able to, down the road, they don't want to be locked into a certain vendor. They want to be able to do what pick and choose and do what they want to do. And the more for them, the better, obviously. So yeah, it does seem like going the open way right now seems to be probably the safest bet for a lot of companies out there. It seems like that's getting a lot of good momentum. It seems like at this point too.
Yep. And I think another aspect of it is also being able to keep a pulse on all these because getting accurate data, even in terms of what the market is doing specifically, is not that straightforward. I mean, Dan, hopefully what you're doing is a huge part of it, right?
But even it's difficult. Yeah, I agree though. It's difficult. It's tough out there right now. That's for sure. Yeah,
and then even the way different parties describe SDN. So if you, for example, have a huge client base or a product line switch that you now enabled with SDN functionality, does that mean all of a sudden there's a spike in revenues for SDN products, right? Is that a sort of almost like a gradual shift from existing products, or is it an architectural approach versus a new product line? So even in terms of market sizing and reporting accurate data, I think it's not straightforward and obvious. I mean, I've seen a huge variation of projections in terms of what the market size is going to be. But I think that the good news is all of those projections are showing big growth. So the question is how aggressive that growth is going to be. That we will, I think, wait and see.
Yeah, it's a great point. You're absolutely right. I mean, definitely a lot of different projections. And I mean, they are all at least going upwards, which is a good thing. But it's just the numbers on the side of the chart there that matter. There are kind of differences, I think, at this point. But yeah, that all get worked out at some point here as well too. So that makes the most sense. Well, hey Jay, we definitely appreciate the great insight on this today. Obviously, it sounds like you guys are doing quite a bit of work right now in this space. And obviously, like you were saying, I mean, it's kind of choppy waters out there because trying to find your footing and see what's happening. But you guys are at least pushing forward with it at this point, which is great to see out there. So we definitely appreciate the insight on the topic today. And thanks so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Likewise, Dan. Enjoyed our discussion. Thank you.
All right, that sounds good. Well, hey everyone, thanks again for watching this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, and make sure to check us out again next week.
NFV SDN Reality Check with Dan Meyer is a production of RCR TV. To suggest show topics or to reach Dan, you can find him on email, dmeyer@rcrwireless.com, and on Twitter @Meyer_Dan. For more Dan, news on NFV SDN and everything wireless, find your way over to rcrwireless.com.